Hello, welcome to Portal's Portfolio series, where we will have readings and interviews with student writers and published authors from Vancouver Island University and around the country. We'll talk with them about what it takes to be a writer in the ever-changing world of publishing. Portal 2021 is currently being designed by Chantal Calitz, and all 104 gorgeous color pages will be shipped off to the printer on March 24th. It'll be on newsstands in late May. Stay tuned for information about our 30th anniversary virtual launch to be live streamed on Facebook in mid-April. It'll feature contributor readings and merch such as new t-shirts, mugs, and book bags to mark 3 decades of publishing in the heart of Vancouver Island. Hello, everybody. I'm extremely honored to have Bernice Friesen as a keynote author this season on the Portfolio series. Bernice is a writer, editor, and visual artist whose writing has been published in Canada and Europe. Her writing has been included in the 2 League of Canadian Poets winners anthologies and Best Short Stories of 2002 by Oberon. The title story of her first book, The Seasons Are Horses, won the Vicky Metcalf Award for Best Young Adult Short Story in Canada. And her first novel, The Book of Beasts, was shortlisted for the Writers' Trust Fiction Prize. Her new novel, titled Universal Disorder, was published last year in 2020 by Freehand Books. In the Vancouver Sun review of Universal Disorder, Tom Sanborn writes that the novel is a work of glittering brilliance and heart-scalding grief. And he goes on to call it a remarkably well-crafted and moving novel, highly recommended. Portal Magazine's own managing editor, Dave Floss, also wrote a review of Universal Disorder, which will be published in this year's issue out this May. In the review, Dave writes that Universal Disorder examines how to reconcile genius and a broken soul and how to see the potential in damaged lives. You'll be thinking of Charlie long after you put this book down. And today, Bernice Friesen joins me via Zoom from Comox. Bernice, thank you so much for being on the Portfolio series.
And thank you very much. And hello, everybody, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to be reading to you a short segment from the main character, Charlie's childhood. So I'll set the scene first, and then I'll start reading. So it's the mid-1980s, Saskatchewan, a farm in the middle of nowhere. The main character, Charlie, is 9 years old, and he hates Brenda, his father's girlfriend, because if she doesn't leave, his mother and father won't get back together. The farm changed as he swung, sloshing backward and forward, and the seed pods of the nearby carraganas crackled and popped. At the highest point of his swing, he could see the biggest cloud getting closer, its head flattened into a pure white anvil, the color of a bruise beneath. It looked like Hiroshima. Yellow dust from a car rose against the bomb cloud darkness. His heart sank with the fall of the swing. It wasn't his mother in the flaming Charger. The car skidded to a stop in front of the house, and his father's friend Kirby hauled a case of beer out of the trunk. Charlie watched 3 more trails of dust come along, one after the other. It was a party. His father out of the shower, firing up the barbecue, his father's friends with their girlfriends and lawn chairs and BYOB. Brenda sat cranking out more cigarettes on her machine and putting them in a box before they could blow away. She was grinning, laughing, her soft sunburned flesh wobbling. Charlie shut his eyes when he saw her broken tooth. Looking at her felt like eating vanilla pudding and finding a bone in it. His father gave him a double patty with cheese, and he put the usual on it and went back to sit on the swing. He had to spread his knees and lean forward, the ketchup, mustard, and relish gobbing down on the oval of kicked dirt beneath him. He licked his fingers, and he saw his mother. First the cloud of blowing dust, then the flames, and then gravel spraying as she spun the charger in a quick circle. She got out and waved at Charlie. "Hi, happy face," she called, and he repressed the urge to run to her as if he was a little kid. Everyone stopped talking as she walked on her high red heels, her short jean skirt riding up her golden legs. She was even blonder than she'd been in the morning, her dark roots gone, her hair a frozen storm of back-combed frizz slicked above her ears, the hot wind only able to make it shiver. She struck a pose. "Passed with flying colors." There was a whoop from Dale and a chorus of cheers because his father's friends were her friends, and suddenly the whole party was for her graduation party. "Now I can work in any salon in the country." "See," Robbie exclaimed, "you're no dumb blonde. The way you can spot the weird in things and laugh before anyone." She stopped suddenly and stared. "Holy shit, Robbie, who cut your hair? Brenda or Satan?" Her wild giggle started everybody laughing. Brenda put her hand over her mouth as if she was going to take the cigarette out. "Luann," his father said, holding out a beer. She batted her eyelashes and snatched it. Robbie looked her up and down, and she tilted her hips and took a bow. "I'm late because the girls and I had to do part of our tests on each other, and then we celebrated. Don't you just love the hair? It's so Cyndi Lauper." She kicked off her shoes, her ruby slippers, then took possession of Robbie's favorite lawn chair. He rushed to put a hamburger together and brought it to her. "Here, just the way you like it." She set the plate on her knees and dropped the car keys in her lap. On days they were getting along, sometimes she jangled them in front of Robbie, unable to believe he actually wanted her to use the charger. He eyed the keys on the denim stretched across her thighs. "Nice car," he said. "What do I have to do to get it back?" "Divorce me," she said in her Maryland voice. Anything but that. Brenda coughed, holding the cigarette away from her spasms, and his mother rolled her eyes. The anvil cloud was looming above them, its bottom smooth and green around the edges, the sun slanting under, electric on the fields. There was a jab of lightning, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and the thunder plasma explosion. Then the cloud blotted out the sun, and the wind took a deep breath, and Brenda walked up to Luann, sucking her cigarette, blowing the smoke. "Nice outfit. What'd you do, mug a whore?" His mother's mouth opened, and a gust of laughter escaped. "Yeah, your mother." Big drops of rain slapped the earth, kicked up dust. Suddenly, Brenda and his mother were screaming, yanking hair, the wind blasting everything off the table. "Holy shit," someone yelled, and then Charlie heard it. It did sound like a freight train. Dale grabbed Luann, Robbie wrestled Brenda, and Charlie saw something hit the peonies and bounce in a burst of pink petals. A hailstone the size of a fist fell and leaped over Charlie. The wind took the lawn chairs, and everyone was running, shouting in the roaring darkness. His father snatched him off the swing, and there were cold impacts on his shoulders that made him cry out. Then chaos, running into the house, down the stairs, the crash of glass under the engine of the storm, the basement windows gushing water and ice as if the world was ending. And then it ended. It was quiet and cold. There was a weight crushing him against his mother, his father. Robbie slowly leaned back. Everyone got to their feet. On one side of the basement, there were puddles of wet glass and ice beneath the empty holes of the windows. The basement smell had turned to rain. Robbie led the way upstairs, taking tentative steps onto the ice and glass shards on the living room carpet. "Robbie," Luann said, and he looked down at her bare feet and picked her up in his arms, and she held on tight as he stumbled. Wind was blowing through the jagged hole that used to be the living room window. There was a churn of hailstones and glass on the couch and a piece of rusted metal sticking out of the shattered television. The front door was torn off. His father carried his mother out over the threshold into the shredded whiteness. One of the cottonwoods was down and the other was splintered. The chains of the swing tangled in the bare and broken branches. There were shattered shingles, bits of metal, and branches everywhere, the bushes like piles of broken bones. Something huge and gray, the old threshing machine, was hunched against the barn. The round steel granaries were gone. No, a couple were crumpled far off in the fields of tattered ice. One was crushed in the lake like tinfoil, its twister brand name deformed. The pain Charlie felt in his chest was for the trees and his swing, that flying happiness he would never have again. Suddenly, a flood of sunlight came under the cloud. Everything was soaked dark, but light was glinting off the jagged shards. Robbie barely moved, his eyes wide, his head shaking. The shed Charlie had hammered was just a skeleton of 2x4s, the roof and boards blown off. All the cars were dented and their windshields shattered. Except for Brenda's car. It was gone. And so was Brenda. "You can put me down now," his mother said. But his father didn't. She didn't let go.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you read that passage. The storm is very emblematic of even the title and the idea. It's like the novel takes Charlie apart. It starts with something orderly and then goes to disorder, just like entropy, which is referenced in the book. So you have this kind of moving towards disorder, but then taking a character apart and putting it back together again, which is what the storm is kind of doing in this passage. Mm-hmm. And it really reminds me of the one character, Tamzin's, how she makes the portrait of Charlie in art school.
Yeah.
And how she rips it all apart and puts it back together again, which really reminds me of kind of what you're doing in the novel, where you're taking Charlie apart and putting him back together again. And I'm wondering, for your visual art background, how has your process and experience of doing visual art influenced how you've do your writing, such as novel writing?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I think maybe I can illustrate the sort of thing you're talking about with my latest project. I do all sorts of things with all kinds of media, and I haven't really done a lot of visual things lately. But my latest project happened because my house was involved in a motor vehicle accident. A truck came backing up into my driveway to pick something up and actually knocked one of the posts of my carport off its kind of foundation, and the bottom of it was rotten. But fortunately, the fellow was a builder, so he came back a couple of days later. I got him a new post, and he replaced the post, and I was left with this old post that was cut in two, and didn't know what to do with it. So I was getting to know my power tools all over again. And I have this makeshift post in the backyard that's partly broomstick, and it holds up a set of lights that goes around one of my patios. It's just stuck in a piece of cement. And so I thought, well, there's this, I have this 6-foot post. And so I painted the bottom bit with tar, and I've attached it to the remaining bit of the post. And I had the remains of a plum tree pruning. I was cutting off the crown of this plum tree because I'm training it better because it's been neglected. So I have this wonderful sort of crown of a tree that's maybe I don't know, about 3 feet high. It's got some branches and it looks like a tree. And so I made a little cap for this post and attached the tree to it. So I'm about to sink that in the ground, and it's going to be a place to put lights around. So collage. I tend to do a lot of collage, and if you look at my website, I'll take 5 coats and make 1 coat out of them. It's fun. And
so you find that you do that in your writing as well, where you take like the novel bounces in time a bit, and so it's kind of a collage of
well, yes. I mean, I think most people's novels have to be collages because it's their own experiences, but it's also experiences that they've heard about, circumstances that they've seen happening. Even the characters are collages of characters and bits of themselves. Charlie is a composite of people in my family and friends of mine. And that's what creativity is. It's combinations and permutations. The way Charlie describes it in the novel, it's the creation of the universe itself is just the endless manufacture of combinations and permutations. Different things can happen all the time. Combinations of atoms and molecules right up to, if you look through evolutionary history, all kinds of different animals have happened and evolved too.
I was going to ask you about that. I got the impression from the book and from your biography that that your this with the background in childhood in Saskatchewan and then art school, and it kind of seemed like it followed your own life, paralleled your own life in some way. And I was wondering, has this been an ongoing project for a long time, or did you just come up with it recently and write the book?
I think the book started maybe about 28 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But that's just the seed, and so it has been ongoing for quite a while, and of course transformed, and I've done other projects and books along the way, and so, but yes, it does have a lot of elements of my life, the Saskatchewan childhood, and I come from a very nerdy family, a family with autism spectrum disorder and dyslexia and interesting brains in the family. And lots of engineering. My uncle was one of the designers of the Canadarm on the space shuttle. So all this science stuff that sort of was the male side of the family that as a female was regarded, it's like, oh, I'll do that, when my father would fix my car and things like that. And I kind of wanted to do it myself, hoping he was teaching me, but now I'm doing that. I'm using the skill saw, and writing this novel gave me the opportunity to delve into the scientific side of my family. There's one other writer in the family and artists, but here I was getting into the science side and the physics and the engineering side, which allowed me to discover a different side of my brain as well, which was exciting.
One thing I was wondering, since it was a long time project, what was the importance of completing and publishing this story now or in 2020? What made you come to complete this project?
Well, you're always writing, and you always need to write when you're a writer. It's just what you do. And originally, this novel, this novel is actually kind of a diptych, which is a painting in two parts. So it actually has a companion novel that was finished first, which was Tamzin's story, his love interest, which hasn't been published yet, even though it was finished first, which may still need some work. We'll just have to see about that. But 28 years ago, 29 years ago, it was all conceived as one novel. But as with collaging and gathering all these bits and pieces and invention, I wasn't sure how large. I mean, I think writing novels is very difficult, and you're not sure how large they need to be when you start off. And so I think it got sort of too large for me, and the book needed to be divided in half. So it became 2 books. And I slowly realized that novels you're still finite. You can't stuff everything into them. Mm-hmm. And so they're not that big. So a matter of learning by experience, which seems to be, the way I work.
Tamzin was, I think, my favorite character in the book. So I'm glad to hear that you're writing another novel about Tamzin. That I think I found her the most interesting, and she comes on so subtly and slowly through the book, but just gains momentum throughout. And I really love characters that do things that surprise you or you don't want them to do. And she does that. So she definitely got into my head as I was reading more than some of the other characters, and so that's really interesting.
I'm so relieved you say that, because she is a character that I thought meant a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. There has been talk that fewer books are published about female protagonists, and fewer books are published by women about female protagonists in particular. And so I thought perhaps the reason why this book isn't published yet is because there's a problem with the character of Tamzin, is that she's a bit too challenging for the modern world or something, because she's not a traditional figure. I mean, she's a mother, but she's definitely not apple pie, and she's definitely an edgier version of what we think of as mother. And so I mean, things are changing. And when I was looking last for a publisher for this book, things have changed. So I have to check things out and see. I think part of the reason why it took so long to write these books was the fact that they were companion novels. And they each influenced the other. It was trying to climb 2 ladders at once. So I couldn't go forward with one book until I was sort of to that stage with the other book. So I had to sort of take one step at a time with both books at the same time. So I was writing both. And that had its own difficulty. And I had to be blind to the being inside the mind of Tamzin when I was working from inside the mind of Charlie. I had to be absorbed in one book completely and forget about the other book also. So I don't recommend that. I'm not going to do that again unless I can't absolutely help it.
Yeah, Universal Disorder has such a strong sense of Charlie's voice. And when I was reading it, I kept forgetting that it was written in third person. I kept thinking it was in first person. And every time I picked it up to keep reading, I had to remember, oh, yeah, this is in third person because the voice is so strong, and using that free indirect discourse where the narrator mind is so meshed with the POV character's mind that it's almost just blurred. And I was wondering, um, did you, when you were writing the novel, did you often write in first person and then have to like rewrite it in third person, or did you just go with the voice in third person? And
No, I didn't actually have to do that. I I wrote my first novel in this kind of style. Um, oh, of course, I forgot what I was going to say. Um, but as I was writing, one of the things that I was thinking about, because I think about literary theory as well, and writing theory and the process of writing a novel and fictional theory, and sort of the way that I've come to think about the way I pursue crafting the novel is that I'm trying, and I believe that the main character of a novel is actually the reader. So if you can write so that the reader becomes the main character of the novel and gets lost in it as they're reading it, I think you've won the battle in a way. And I mean, I love to be immersed in a novel, and I think that love of it was one of the reasons why it was something that I desperately wanted to do, and decided that's who I was, a novelist. I think I decided that when I was 12. So, yeah.
nice. One thing that really struck me, especially towards the end of the book, was how perfect the title is for this book. And one thing that kept coming to mind, especially towards the end, was when I was thinking of universal disorder, I was thinking of love, as love being almost like a universal disorder. Love as something that um, we all universally have in some way, but it kind of takes us apart.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with Charlie, takes them apart, puts them back together again. And I don't know if I was on the right track there, but I just kept it kept popping into my head as I was going.
You're bang on. You're bang on. Um, that's what it's all about, is that in a way, love is the universal disorder. But I was also getting at is that the real disorder is disordered love, when people can't love each other properly, as in the father-son love that Charlie and his father had. And because that's the core of the disorder in the novel, is the poisoned relationship that Charlie and his father had. And that's sort of the poison that sinks into Charlie's love relationships later on, is the childhood love, that capacity was damaged in Charlie because of his first family. But yes, I think everybody knows the disorder itself of love. So that is also a universal disorder as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it did turn out to be the most perfect title, but it was difficult to decide on the title.
Oh, really?
For a while it was Dark Matter, and for a while it was Island Universe.
Oh.
So yes, but yes, this was the right
Oh, yeah. The more I read, the more I was like, man, what a great title! It just spans so many of the topics that you cover in the book, even with art, physics, relationships. There's so many things interwoven, and the title seems to cover all of them. One thing I noticed too with the characters was it almost seems like Charlie, in a lot of ways, is the most mature character, even though it's kind of his coming of age story in some, or kind of a building of his life. He seems often the most mature person, and the other characters seem to have kind of a stunted maturity. Like his mom really is. Um, I think when they go down to the States, she's described as, she's still a kid. His dad really acts quite immature with, partying with his buddies and playing hockey and not really moving on to the next phase of their adult life and taking their responsibilities. Whereas Charlie is like that way. It's a very interesting kind of contradiction there.
Well, I think that's partly because of the autism spectrum disorder, and I think that's nowadays when kids have it, a lot of people view it positively and they call it a superpower. And I think one of the positives about it is that it renders you sometimes more immune from peer pressure and kind of playing to the crowd and all that stuff that contributes, I think, to people's immaturity. So it can make you a bit more of an independent thinker and someone who's able to stand apart from the crowd and, take a look back on themselves and to actually stand apart from the rest of humanity and take a look logically at what is happening, and maybe even take a look at themselves logically, whether you can do anything about it or not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a heck of a lot of adults out there who aren't grown up too.
Yeah,
just a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of the situations are like with Tamzin's situation, it's causing her to maybe grow up too fast. She has a lot thrown at her, and she actually, in a lot of ways, handles it responsibly for a while, and so that's really interesting. One thing I was wondering was how you've also written a lot of short stories. How is writing novels? Has it been a struggle? Was it a struggle to shift from short stories to novels, or were you always starting with novels?
Well, I didn't really even know that it was possible to write a book of short stories when I was growing up. I always thought a book was a long story. But I did start writing short stories, I guess as a kind of way of teaching myself fiction. And I was given great encouragement through the Saskatchewan Writers Guild and a lot of mentors there, like Glenn Sorstad. And it was just at a time that I was dealing with my own teenagehood, and that's what brought me my first book, The Seasons Are Horses, which was all stories of teenage girls who grew up in southern Saskatchewan, all fiction. And so that's how I sort of trained myself to write fiction. And but it was interesting because short stories they're so short. They're kind of like these drive-by shootings, and they don't have a lot of flexibility because they have to be so short. And then I kind of got away from that rigidity of having to keep things so controlled and so short by writing some poetry where you can just go out and say whatever and say what you want to say. And it's like the combination of those two things, the fiction, the heavy editing that's necessary, and then the looser kind of more poetic, say whatever you want. The combination of those two things, that enabled me to combine those two things to write long fiction where I could kind of stretch out and be more flexible, and then yet edit, but have more room to move in long fiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bernice, I could probably ask you questions all day, but we're already, I'm conscious of your time here. Is there anything that you're working on now that you're excited about, or has the pandemic influenced your writing in any way?
Well, I'm not really writing about the pandemic. Uh, I am working on a novel about a bit about my family history, which of course is Mennonite, even though my family hasn't been Mennonite by religion for a while. Three of my grandparents were born in Ukraine, and I do have some people in my background who were murdered by anarchists during the Russian Revolution. And there's some old stories in there that I've been using as a kind of kicking off point for a novel that is going to be set during the Cultural Revolution and Stalin's genocide in Ukraine. So I've been doing a lot of research on that and starting to write that.
Very
So that,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, working on my Slavic accent.
No.
And, doing strange things with bits of my house that are knocked off by trucks.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been
And
doing.
trees.
And trees, yes.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This has been great fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for watching the Portal Portfolio Series. Portal is a literary magazine published by students at Vancouver Island University's Creative Writing and Journalism Department on the territories of the Snuneymuxw, Quw'utsun, and Tla'amin First Nations. For more information about Portal's portfolio series, please visit portalmagazine.ca.